So from the start, so we take the pawn and then e4. You have to play this well, otherwise this pawn is going to be really annoying. So after bishop b5 and then bishop takes, knight d7, we need to look at this. Again, we need to double attack on e4. And now what can black do? Well, he can't defend the pawn further with the knight in c5 because you can just play d4. The pawn is not allowed to take en passant because it's pinned. The knight has to go away, and now you have double attack on the pawn. So he can't play, let's say, bishop b4 is a waste of time because you can just attack it straight away. Removing the knight from the attack of this square is still fine for us. And if the bishop goes away and then maybe to b6, then you will still have the attack here. So let's go through this scenario. Bishop takes and pawn takes back. What have we achieved? We have a majority of 5 pawns against 3. Definitely we're going to be able to produce a passed pawn, unless black wants to take the pawn in d5 and reduce our chances to do that. But still, if that happens, then you still have a check, and after a 4 swap of queens, you go into an endgame with an extra pawn and a majority against a minority, 4 against 3. If instead black castles, it doesn't take the pawn, then in that case, just so you know, just play c4. That's a gift that our opponent did for us. Rook e8, we're just looking at a scenario where black wants to develop quicker. White continues with bishop e3, and here there's not much to do. Like bishop e3 just stopped the knight from going to c5. Knight g4 has no access neither to any of these squares. The queen is kind of stuck. Let's look at, for example, knight to b6, or maybe queen e7, but still the moves are interchangeable. Long castle, that's what you're going to do. And then after queen e7, white continues with the thematic g4. And if black had played something else, since you know that you're going to play g4, right? You've got this, you've got the king castle on the long side, and you're going to start throwing pawns against the king side. If black plays, let's say, h5 to stop g4 from happening, then remember this pattern. Knight h3, and then after bishop to d4, you take the knight, and then you'll be able to play knight g4. So let's make an example. So right now bishop d4 is a really strong threat, especially because when the knight is gone, you can take the pawn in h5. And if black plays knight to g4, which seems reasonable, idea of maybe taking the bishop, it's an open endgame. Well, white plays bishop d4 anyway, and after queen e7, it looks like black is still holding this pawn, which is a passed pawn now, but white plays knight to g5 and has an idea of playing h3, kicking the knight away. Black can never play f6 because of knight e6, and yeah, position is much more comfortable for white. So in this position, 2 other moves are going to look at for black: queen e7 and bishop e7. After bishop e7, bishop e7 is just for development, right? So white is just going to take the free pawn. Yes, you might argue black can take back, but white now plays d3. White is continuing the development. Black castles, and now bishop to d2, and after rook to e8, dangerously putting the rook on the same file of our queen and king, so we're going to castle alongside. Let's look at this scenario now. f5, because this happened to me in a game. f5 is an idea to misplace our knight and to stop our future g4 pawn. White now continues with this move, queen to h5. If black pawn takes knight, then we can take the knight with check. And if black plays g6, looks like we have 2 pieces hanging. White continues with queen f3, giving the piece away for free. The reason why I wanted to show this specific line, whilst we talk about all the possible patterns that there are in the Vienna, I'm pretty sure if you've been following the Vienna Gambit from the very first video so far, then you have some really good understanding of many different scenarios, but there's many more to discuss, and they're coming soon. Right now, I just wanted to show this line because it's so beautiful, and I'm going to close the video with this beauty. So white gives the knight for a pawn, but why? Pawn takes, and after pawn takes back, we have a passed pawn that is super strong. And look at the position of the black pieces. This knight is pinned as soon as this knight moves, unless black wants to give us the piece back. This rook is currently blocked by the bishop, and this rook is not playing. So after the best move, which is knight back to f6, well, either way, e5 is coming, right? And after knight to h5, white continues with bishop e3. The knight is pinned, and you're threatening e6. And e6 will win the piece, plus the infiltration of the rook on the 7th rank. Queen c8 doesn't do anything because queen d5 puts double attack on the knight. One more scenario to go through. The last one is going to be queen to e7. And this move seems maybe the most reasonable. That's why I kept it for the end. However, this gives us the explosive move d6. And now 2 ways to take that pawn. If black takes it with a pawn, well, that's not a free pawn because white will play g4. How great it is to know exactly what to do. As mentioned, h6 is pointless, so let's go through it also because it's unavoidable. Just so you know, g5 is coming, and afterwards you're going to be able to play knight d5. Position is fantastic for white. So let's look at h6 and how we go on. g5 is coming, okay, then take, and the knight moves. So now knight d5. The queen has to be very careful where she goes because you're also threatening knight c7 winning the rook. So after queen to d8, now queen e4 check. Only way to block is with the bishop unless black wants to give us his queen for our knight. White now plays d4. And position is already better for white, much better, because black can't even play knight c5 or knight e5 due to our amazing move d4. White is still an extra pawn. If you ask the engine, the best move for black is knight to b6, challenging this very strong knight, because the knight is stopping black from castling as well. It's got double attack on e7. So after knight b6, white continues with bishop to d2. The idea is to play bishop to a5. And if black takes the super strong knight that was stopping him from castling, then well, we have to take. And after castle and long castle, white is going to a comfortable endgame with an extra pawn and with a clear target in d6. So back at the explosive move d6, what happens if black takes it with the queen? Well, now we can take the pawn in e4 once again, and after the queen goes back to e7, we can take the knight takes back, and now d3. This is the type of game where you basically just keep developing without ever swapping yourself. You just wait for them to do it. Right now, if you notice, there's a queen on e7 and the bishop in f8. The bishop can't develop. So in order to develop, we are inducing black to take our queen, and then we can take with development basically. But until then, we're doing nothing. We're not really taking that queen. It's not necessary, because if we take the queen, then black will take back and develop a bishop and then get ready to castle straight away. So what happens after a long castle and black is finally got his queen unpinned? Bishop to d2. Crucial move. This is also because there's a thematic move here which consists of queen to b4 check. We can't use the bishop to go to d2 because then queen will take the pawn in b2 and we're not doing any good. And c3 doesn't do the job because then queen to b5 comes with a double threat, exploiting this loose pawn. The d3 pawn is not good because it's being pressured by the rook. And so after this move, and also threatening rook e8, pinning the queen to the king, this will be terrible. d4 wouldn't save us because rook e8, then bishop blocks, but then queen can take our queen. King takes, we can't take back with the knight because rook takes bishop, so we have to take with the king. But even then, knight d5, knight g4, there will be double attack on the bishop and the bishop is pinned and white will lose. So in this position, recognize that pattern and play bishop to d2. It's the best move. Or worst case scenario, you know what, just swap queens at this point if you're scared, but you shouldn't, because a strong player doesn't swap queens out of fear. So let's go on a few moves and then we'll finally close this video. Queen to c5 in order to finally develop the bishop to d6. Now long castle, and after bishop to d6, black is finally completed developed. So are we. Queen f3. We still have our pawn advantage. We managed to neutralize that move. We still have a few scenarios to go through in the next videos about that move. They are maybe to be considered a bit more dangerous, but still all very neutralizable with the right knowledge. Just a couple more moves. Rook h to e8, and then white goes on with knight to h3, the best move. The idea is to go to g5 and have two pawns under attack. So after best move h6, white continues with rook d to e1, controlling the open file. And this endgame shouldn't be a problem. Another thing, another pattern to know is after knight to d5 here, you do want to avoid nasty situations with knight b4. It's really scary. So you just play a3 here. White is completely safe.